You are about to listen to a free portion of the Young Turks. To podcast the complete show, sign up for membership at tytnetwork.com/membership. And if you sign up during the month of September, you're eligible to receive a free Blu-ray or DVD of the Young Turks and Cenk documentary, Mad as Hell. So sign up, tytnetwork.com/membership.
Well, the Young Turks is New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Tonight is the New Hampshire primary. We've been covering this race already for what it feels like a decade, but the voting has just begun in the primaries. So we had Iowa caucus last week. We have New Hampshire primary tonight. That's going to be at 7 o'clock Eastern. That's when our coverage is going to start. The show for your live audiences out here has been moved up a little early right now. That's why I'm starting half an hour earlier than I normally would. We're going to squeeze in hour one and hour two here as we normally do, and then go to our live New Hampshire coverage. Right now, Bernie Sanders up by 13 points. If he wins, according to the combination of polls, my guess is the mainstream media, if he wins by less than that, they'll say, oh, no, it's no good. No, Hillary's catching him. It's over. But if he wins by more than that, I think for a brief moment there will be, oh, my God, Bernie Sanders won by 15 or said, nobody could have seen this coming. They've got to pretend to be surprised either way, even though we all see the polls. Okay. Sometimes you see the polls and you actually get surprised. Like Donald Trump was leading in Iowa, and then it turns out he didn't win. So that was surprising. You're allowed to be surprised by that. Okay, and speaking of Trump, he also seems to have a gigantic lead in New Hampshire. But which establishment candidate comes in second is going to be important. And whether Trump can hold that lead, because he didn't hold it in Iowa. So that's going to be fascinating as well. New thing out, talking point out, Mark Halperin, speaking for the mainstream media, said that if Donald Trump doesn't win by more than 5, that means he lost. No, that means he won, but by less than 5. Okay, so we'll have all that coverage for you coming up. And in the second segment of this hour, I've got Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders on Wall Street. I mean, it's a doozy. And then Bernie Sanders versus the Wall Street Journal. Oh, you're going to love that. And in the second hour, apparently there's a thing called Auto-Brewery Syndrome. You might have it. There might be a brewery inside you. Okay, I love that story. I also love the story about whether food addiction is real. Can you actually be addicted to food? There's some evidence that you can, but we're not positive yet. That's all in the second hour. Find out. That's why I love doing this show. All right, let's get started. I got a lot of campaign news for you guys. No. This is an excellent title, but for a different story. Nope. Not that one either. There we go. Okay. Okay. So Marco Rubio had a bit of a breakdown in the last Republican debate. Rubio, when challenged on his talking points by Chris Christie, malfunctioned and started repeating all the talking points. And ever since, he's been thrown for a loop. We got a 404 error here. And so he's been doing it over and over again. But first, I want to show you what happened in the debate, and then we'll come back and show you what's happened recently.
Let's dispel once and for all with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true. There it is. Let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is trying to change this country. He wants America to become more like the rest of the world. Anyone who believes that Barack Obama isn't doing what he's doing on purpose doesn't understand what we're dealing with here.
Okay. Let's dispel with something, first of all. He knows what he's doing. Look, the problem isn't the point you're making, and when challenged on it the next day, he repeated the same talking point, right? The problem is that all you do is repeat talking points over and over again because you're a freaking robot. You know what that means? You're empty inside. You don't have any original thoughts. Your consultants fed you these canned lines, and like an actor, you repeat them. So now faced with this, what does he do? I mean, this glitch is real. Watch this.
We are taking our message to families that are struggling to raise their children in the 21st century, because as you saw, Jeanette and I are raising our 4 children in the 21st century. And we know how hard it's become to instill our values in our kids instead of the values that try to ram down our throats. In the 21st century, it's become harder than ever to instill in your children the values they teach in our homes and in our church instead of the values that they try to ram down our throats in the movies, in music, in popular culture.
We didn't repeat that. He repeated it. That is not a trick in editing. Malfunction, 21st century values down the throat. I do not know what to do. There is a system error. Maybe Marco Rubio watched porn and he got malware. Okay, now we had a little bit of fun with this. We gave you some sound effects here for what must be happening inside his robot mind. So let's watch that clip again with those.
We are taking our message to families that are struggling to raise their children in the 21st century, because as you saw, Jeanette and I are raising our 4 children in the 21st century. And we know how hard it's become to instill our values in our kids instead of the values that try to ram down our throats. In the 21st century, it's become harder than ever to instill in your children the values they teach in our homes and in our church, instead of the values that they try to ram down our throats in the movies, in music, in popular culture.
When he realizes at the end that he has repeated the same exact line, that's when he pauses for again. Breakdown. I have repeated talking points again. Donors will start to take some money away. I will start to run out of battery. This is a real problem for Marco Roboto. Oh, Marco. Polo. Okay, get a clue. Find a clue. So that's Marco Roboto for you guys. Now, there's some folks who have seized upon this. Let's talk about that next. So Marco Rubio has been accused of being a robot. That's because he keeps repeating the same talking points over and over. Chris Christie busted him on it. You guys know that. So now protesters started showing up immediately after the Saturday night debate where this first got exposed. Sunday morning, guys dressed up as robots started hounding Marco Rubio, and they've kept at it. They're still doing it. So now the Marco Rubio supporters, taking a page out of Donald Trump's fascist book, have started to assault the robots. We have a robot war in this presidential campaign, just when you thought it couldn't get any better. So first of all, let me show you a description of what happened, according to Raw's story. One man wearing a silvery suit, this is already fun, and carrying a sign reading #RobotRubio is slammed with a sign by one Rubio supporter while another supporter of the Republican candidate grabbed him and put him in a headlock. Now, I read that to you, even though we have the video, because I'm amused by the idea of putting a robot in a headlock. Now, come here, you son of a bitch. Okay, so let's watch. Let's have fun.
Why do you have your hands on me? Look at these cameras. Look at all these cameras.
Now, that's an assault. That guy should be arrested, but it is a little funny. So, first of all, I like the robot being like, "Why are you laying your hands on me?" And then my favorite is that, unlike the Trump supporters, they kind of gave up in the middle. They're like, this got tiring. Let's go home. So then the guy goes, I'll tell you what happened to that guy in the green jacket in a second. But like the Trump supporters, in the midst of a fascist assault, you start chanting the name of your fascist leader. So in that case, as you saw there, they were chanting, Marco, Marco, as this assault was happening. Now, eventually they did throw down one of the robots. I want to show you the picture of that. I mean, you've already seen it in our sidebar there. But that robot was able to get back up, and it is functioning today. In fact, it's functioning better than the original Marco Roboto, who had another breakdown today. So the guy in the green jacket, I mean, you saw it in the video. It's as clear as day. If somebody came up to you in the middle of the street and put you in a headlock, it was like, and tried to throw you down, even if he was unsuccessful, that's totally and obviously an assault that you should get arrested for. So let's find out what happened to him. The green-jacketed assailant then mixed back into the crowd of chanting fans and counter-protesters, but was seen greeting Rubio when the candidate made an appearance. Now, so, look, of course, as I've told you already, it's a little funny when you've got robots fighting humans on a presidential campaign. But there's a serious side to it. Stop assaulting protesters. Protesters have every right. They have First Amendment right, most important right in our Constitution, to protest politicians like Senator Rubio. You can't go lay your hands on him. The robot is right. Score one for the robots. Okay? And that's clearly an assault, and we can't have it. Every time you disagree with someone, or they're in an outfit you don't like, or they're saying something you don't like, you don't get to hit them. That's not how this government is supposed to function. But you know what? I don't think it's white privilege. I think it's right-wing privilege. You get to take over federal buildings and nobody ever does anything with it, with weapons. You get to point it at cops. Nobody ever does anything with it. You steal $1 million in grazing fees, as Clive and Bundy did, point your weapons at cops again. Nobody does anything about it. And you get to assault people at right-wing rallies. Black guy gets assaulted massively, and another one we showed, a Latino guy gets assaulted. A woman gets thrown down. Nobody ever does anything. There's no law and order. No one ever gets arrested. So, and again, we have these guys who are protesters, exercising their constitutional rights, gets thrown down, assaulted. What do you do? Oh, great job. Way to go. Marco Rubio greets you later, shakes hands with you. Somebody gets some policing in here and arrest the guys doing the assaulting. Unless you do that, this is going to get much uglier pretty soon. Then it's not going to be funny at all. Okay, and that's Marco Rubio. Let's move on to the king fascist himself, Donald Trump. And then we'll move on to bestiality. Oh, a cat fight here. Let's do it. I'm never not amused by that cat fight intro. Okay, in this case, it's a little literal. Ted Cruz and Donald Trump are in a fight over waterboarding. Now, Ted Cruz showed a very rare moment of humanity in the last Republican debate when he was like, well, waterboarding, I've said in the past that it's not the right thing to do. By the way, by U.S. law and international law, waterboarding is considered torture. It is a crime. We have punished that crime in the past when our soldiers got waterboarded. Now, the Cheney-Bush administration broke that law, but there was never any consequences, right-wing privilege. And so now we're having a debate as to whether we should follow that law or not. Now, Ted Cruz was actually on the right side of this. And then, of course, in the midst of a debate within the octagon, as the savages were calling for blood, he misstepped here by showing that little bit of humanity. So let me show you that first, and then I'll show you Trump's reaction today.
Well, under the definition of torture, no, it's not. Under the law, torture is excruciating pain that is equivalent to losing organs and systems. So under the definition of torture, it is not. It is enhanced interrogation. It is vigorous interrogation, but it does not meet the generally recognized definition of torture.
If elected president, would you bring it back?
I would not bring it back in any sort of widespread use. And indeed, I joined with Senator McCain in legislation that would prohibit line officers from employing it, because I think bad things happen when enhanced interrogation is employed at lower levels.
So in the beginning, like every Republican, he lies about it and says it's not technically torture. It is, under every definition. But then he has said in the past that he wouldn't use it, so they say, will you bring it back? And he's stuck. The barbarians want him to bring it back. Bring back the torture! So he pauses for a second, and then they laugh at him like, this guy doesn't even want to torture people that much. Trump then later in the debate jumps in right afterwards and says, oh yeah, I'd bring back waterboarding, and then some. Okay, so now Trump, at a Monday night rally in Manchester, does far worse. Go ahead and watch.
You heard the other night at debate, they asked Ted Cruz, serious question, well, what do you think of waterboarding? Is it okay? And honestly, I thought he'd say absolutely, and he didn't. He said, well, it's, he's concerned about the answer, because some people, she just said a terrible thing. You know what she said? Shout it out, because I don't want to... Okay, you're not allowed to say, and I never expect to hear that from you again. She said, I never expect to hear that from you again. She said he's a pussy. That's terrible. Terrible.
This guy's a showman, man. Total Rowdy Roddy Piper move there. You hit somebody over the head with a coconut, and then you walk up like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do, right? So after that, you know what happened? Of course, the crowd loved it. They ate that up. They start chanting right afterwards, Trump, 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 right? So you think that that's going to hurt him? Some people are playing it today like, oh, he might have really gone beyond the pale here. A person running for president is serious office. You're using a word like pussy. The guys who like him even more. Oh, finally a guy talking common sense. Pussy. Which kind of pussy wouldn't torture people? Hey, how about if our soldiers are tortured? How dare you? Yeah, I know. But once you put the knuckles down for a second, you realize we don't do torture so our guys won't get tortured. Oh, right. Plus, it's been proven over and over it doesn't work. So now Trump, being the showman that he is, he went on to say, ma'am, you're reprimanded, okay? You're reprimanded. For the press, this is a serious reprimand. Now, the reason he's saying that is because somebody called Obama Muslim in one of his rallies and he didn't correct him. So he's messing around with the press like, no, I'm not going to correct them. They want to think that Obama's Muslim? That's awesome. They want to think Ted Cruz is a pussy? Fantastic. He didn't have to repeat that line. She didn't say it loud enough, so he felt like, they didn't hear it. This is going to be so entertaining. I got to say it. You can't call him a pussy. Walk away. He's going to beat someone with a belt. It's going to happen. He watched wrestling just like we did. It's just around the corner. Or hit someone with a chair in the middle of a debate. Okay. Yes, it's not very presidential. Yes, it will definitely help him with Republican voters. Get real. Okay. Let me put it this way. In a Republican race, you certainly would rather be the one calling someone else a pussy than the one getting called a pussy. Just, these are rules about politics you should know. Okay. Now, we go on to a story that's not about the presidential election, although it is done by a political body, unfortunately. Okay. So, there we go. Okay. Now, in Michigan, there's very, very serious issues, including Flint, Michigan, where people are being poisoned by the water. Now, there's at least 8 deaths. It's unclear yet whether those are absolutely linked to the poisoned water. But the kids having the lead in their system is linked to it, absolutely. And unfortunately, you can't get the lead out of the kids. It's just an absolute disaster. So the legislature in Michigan is going to spring into action, and they're going to make sure that they've got important bills they're going to pass on this. So what do? They passed a bill outlawing sodomy. What? Can you imagine? Instead of trying to fix Flint, Michigan, I know the governor's doing press conferences, etc. But instead of being like, okay, let's get the thing in water bottles and then let's make sure kids aren't poisoned, they're like, no, now back to important things. What are gay people up to? Okay, let's try to ban that. The bill compares homosexuality to bestiality and tries to ban sodomy along with bestiality. So let's go to U.S. Uncut here for an explanation. The insanity of this move, they explain, is made even more outrageous by the fact that, 1, Michigan already has a sodomy ban, and 2, the ban is completely pointless. The 2003 Supreme Court case of Lawrence v. Texas declared sodomy bans unconstitutional in all states. But the knucklehead Republicans in Michigan now have a double sodomy ban. Well, good for you guys. And they called sodomy in the bill an abominable and detestable crime. And in case you're unclear on this, sodomy is not just for gay people. Anyone can commit sodomy. And sodomy is not just anal sex, it's also oral sex. So if you have given or received a blowjob in the state of Michigan, you're doubly guilty. We're not going to fix the poison in the water, but we're coming for you. That pun was not intended, although it is a little amusing. Okay. By the way, how much can you get for getting head in Michigan? 15 years is the maximum sentence. The degree to which this is insane is immeasurable. The ban was able to pass because it was attached to an animal rights bill mostly aimed at keeping pets out of the hands of animal abusers. The discriminatory measure is squeezed inside the section banning bestiality. So they say, well, bestiality and sodomy being abominable and detestable crimes. The almighty legislature of Michigan that is honorable and really hard at work has to get busy banning that instead of fixing the real problems in Michigan. And Nathan Wellman from U.S. Uncut summarizes it this way. He says, so to reiterate, rather than help citizens that are being poisoned by their own water, Michigan senators chose to spend their time and money upholding an already existing sodomy ban that is impossible to enforce. Well done, Michigan Republicans. I don't know why you guys are in trouble at all. I can't quite figure it out. I'm going to have to get to the bottom of it. Okay. I'm a bad man. Okay, let's take a quick break. Then Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders versus the Wall Street Journal. Don't miss it. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you. Some tweets. And you could always tweet us at hashtag TYT Live throughout the show, including our campaign coverage, which is about to start at 7 o'clock Eastern for New Hampshire primary tonight. For Today writes in, I really feel the age of the internet has completely exposed the Clintons and their old egregious lying style politics. I've been saying that for a long time. It's not just the Clintons. The politicians just didn't get used to it. Mm-hmm. They grew up at a time where you could just lie, and they'd have to try to find tape of you back in 1983 saying something differently. Now everything's on tape, and it's taken them decades to adjust.
Oh, my God. The Bosnia thing.
Oh, yeah.
I just can't get past it. So there's this video that's going viral on Facebook, and it shows all the different hypocrisies that Hillary Clinton was involved in, and one of them was her trip to Bosnia years ago. She claimed that it was so dangerous that she couldn't even be greeted by anyone. But then there was video of her, like, not only landing in a safe place, she was, like, shaking hands with a little kid and everything. I mean...
She pretty much admitted later that she did lie about that.
Yeah.
That was her Brian Williams moment.
Jeez.
Okay. Gayarthi writes in, the fear from the establishment on Wall Street is the most exciting aspect of Bernie's candidacy. Hashtag feel the burn. It's true. To see him scared like this, oh, it's wonderful. Because we're not the only ones who see what's going to happen in New Hampshire. They see the polls, too.
Yeah.
They're in a panic. El Duende Chingon writes in, I can't imagine many potential Bernie voters reading the Wall Street Journal. I don't know who the fuck they're trying to reach. No, El Duende, here's what you're missing. They don't think that they're going to swing Bernie voters. That's a smoke signal to the rest of the establishment. Panic. Bernie's coming. Panic.
Yeah.
Panic. Right? So the fact that they're in a panic is actually wonderful. Okay, now, not only are we doing New Hampshire primary coverage tonight, but Thursday night there's a Democratic debate. We're going to cover that at 8:45 p.m. Eastern. Saturday night there's a Republican debate. Those are always entertaining. 8:45 p.m. Eastern, always at tytnetwork.com/live. Okay? And I got to read you one more thing because this is fun. You guys obviously know Michael Moore, Fahrenheit 9/11, Bowling for Columbine, etc. He's got a new movie coming out, Where to Invade Next. I already like it based on the title alone. He's going to talk about education, prison, women's rights, drug criminalization, institutional racism, and socialism. But it's actually an upbeat movie, and it's how to actually make America great again. So I'm curious to see how he did that. Well, you can see his latest film, Where to Invade Next, in theaters around the country, actually starting on Friday, February 12th. And you can find a theater near you at wheretoinvadenext.com. Wheretoinvadenext.com. All right, Casper, what do you got for us?
All right, I'm actually going to skip the first story and move on to the second one, just letting you guys know. All right, I think it's more important. So
Go.
let's do that. All right. Back in 2007, a Mormon leader by the name of Warren Jeffs was arrested, prosecuted, and convicted for having 2 child brides. Apparently, this was a very widespread issue among these Mormon fundamentalists living in Utah. Well, it turns out that almost a decade after he was arrested and got a life sentence in prison, the same behavior is still happening, with local police kind of turning the other way whenever something like this happens. Now, they're facing a Department of Justice investigation, and let me give you the details on how that's going. The adjoining towns of Hilldale, Utah, and Colorado City, Arizona, are the subject of a federal trial in Phoenix, Arizona this month, which alleges that the town's powerful fundamentalist leadership denied non-FLDS, that's the Church of Latter-day Saints, members access to water, electricity, housing, and help from the local police forces. So understand that if you were living in these areas and you were not part of the Mormon Church and you did not follow this fundamentalist interpretation of the Mormon religion, well, the city would actually retaliate against you by not giving you the resources that you need in order to survive. Let me give you more. In multiple cases, the Department of Justice claims a local utility company cut off non-church members' water, then blamed the outages on a non-existent water shortage. In another case, the DOJ accuses local police of allowing church members to steal property by building a fence across non-church members' land.
So you might wonder, why do they hate the non-church members so much? Okay, you got your own church. What are you messing with us for? Number one, it's a cult, so they want to encourage everybody to join and punish people who aren't joining. But more importantly, it's usually directed at people who have left a church. Then you get excommunicated. Then you're in a world of hurt. All of a sudden, your water doesn't work. Everybody else in town has their water working, but not you. And much, much worse, they take your wives and your kids away.
Yes.
And they give your wives to other people, including your brother.
Yes! This is so crazy.
And they tell your brother to go ahead and have sex with your wives and keep your kids. You want to talk about disgusting. You know what this is, by the way? Sharia law. This is actually, even in the deepest, most conservative interpretation of Sharia law in Islam, I'm not sure it gets this bad.
Yeah, well, look, there are issues with Sharia law, obviously, right?
No, I mean, look, obviously there's decapitations, etc. That's pretty bad, right?
Yes.
But I've never heard it under Sharia law, I'm going to take your wives away, make sure your brother has sex with them,
right?
Okay, and take your kids from you, too.
But not only are they taking kids and allowing others to raise those children if the biological father or mother isn't part of the church, they're taking children and turning them into brides, which you see in a lot of fundamentalist religions. So let's touch on that a little bit. So under Jeff's leadership, girls as young as 12 years old were forced into spiritual marriages with much older men. According to one former police officer's testimony in the Phoenix court last week, the practice continued after his arrest, with police allegedly turning a blind eye to the marriages or even taking child brides themselves. So to the story that Cenk was talking about, there was one guy who was part of the church. He was actually a local politician as well. And he decided to leave the church, and the church retaliated against him by taking his family and making sure that the wife was now with the brother, and the children were being raised by the brother as well.
Okay, so I want to explain why that happened. It wasn't even that he so much voluntarily left the church as Warren Jeffs, in a power move when his father passed away, got rid of his political opponents.
Yes.
And when he got rid of the political opponents, he excommunicated them and did this to them.
Yes.
So now, it's, again, my point about Sharia law is not to say one is better than the other. It's to say, hey, for those of you who are worried that Sharia law will one day come to America, I got news for you. It's already here. They just happen to call themselves Christians. It's a crazy sect of Christianity, the fundamentalist Mormons, and they do stuff that is abysmal.
Yes.
And so sometimes people say, and we've talked about this on the show, in Europe, when they're simulating refugees from Middle Eastern countries, they say, hey, these are our laws, and you have to follow our laws despite what your culture says. In this case, hey, fundamentalist Mormons, these are our laws. You don't get to have sex with 12-year-olds. We're going to arrest every one of you that does that and put you behind cells. Now, the unfortunate problem is in these local communities, they have right-wing privilege. So, oh, they're Christians. Oh, I know they're a little crazy, but leave them alone. Take decades before you figure out how to prosecute them. And then the cops are on their side.
Yes. In fact, this reminds me of a similar theme when it comes to the Catholic Church and the number of priests that were molesting little boys. I mean, you guys should watch the movie Spotlight. It's incredible. It has to do with the Boston Globe breaking the story of just how many priests were molesting kids. But when you watch that movie and when you read a little deeper into that story, you notice that the priests were able to do it for as long as they did without any consequences, because not only was the church covering it up, local authorities were also covering it up. And so you see it in this Mormon story, you see it in the Catholic Church story. It's people who feel this guilt to speak out against religious practices that they may not agree with, right? So instead, they just stay quiet or they protect the church.
But it goes further than that. For the cops in these local communities, they were members of this church. So they didn't abuse these girls, and some of them would marry girls as young as 15, right, which is against the law. They didn't just allow that abuse despite the fact that they were powerful.
Right.
They allowed it because they had the power to be able to allow it, right? So, look, guys, wakey, wakey. This is what we've been saying throughout. First of all, it's the fundamentalism, stupid. It's not, oh, my God, only one religion really sucks and all the rest of them are kind of wrong but lovely anyway. They're not bad like the one bad religion. No, it's the fundamentalism in each one of the religions that's abysmal. I don't know why anyone's stupid enough that they can't see that. You're going to go around and excuse this? We don't excuse the horrible parts of Islam. We point it out over and over and over again. Not enough, not enough, not enough, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to other religions, oh, it's not important, it's not important, it's not important.
Jake,
Let's just only talk about one religion.
I know, but what you don't understand, Cenk, is that we'll never solve the problem of extremists, especially Muslim extremists, if we don't talk shit about them constantly.
Oh, I see.
And if we don't make generalizations about all Muslims, then we don't solve the problem of terrorism.
If I was like those idiots, I would take this story and then I go, every Mormon is guilty. Let's start profiling every Mormon. If we have to torture Mormons, they made us do it because they're raping 12-year-old girls. They, right? We have to make sure we ban all Mormons from the country, right? Oh my God, they're already here. What do we do? Should we kick them out? No, you idiots. It's the fundamentalist Mormons that are doing this. Okay. So
unfortunately,
finally,
you're trying to reason with people who don't have two brain cells to rub together.
Look,
the reality is the people who want to make those generalizations about any religion, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Catholic, whether it's Mormon, doesn't matter. Anyone who uses the absolute worst individuals from any given group as a representation of everyone else already had a bias against that group. It's not about their religion. It's about the fact that you don't like the others. You don't like the foreigners. They make you uncomfortable. You want to protect your white race. That's totally fine. But don't pretend like you're some intellectual who's done great research and you understand the complexity of these issues. No, you're just a moron, right?
Okay. All right. So one last thing about power. Okay. So we have to stop trusting people in power as if they will, by definition, have our interests, best interests in mind. So I'm not saying, hey, break down all authority, don't listen to your parents, let's not go to school, yell at your teachers. No, of course not. But we have to find a balance. And in the past, we leaned way too much in favor of just trust power and bow your head. The priests come to abuse your kids, you bow your head. They're priests. They're priests. They're mullahs. They're imams. They must be holy. Are you kidding me? They're this fundamentalist Mormon leader. Give your 12-year-old daughter to them. Okay? No. Don't bow your head. And it's the cops. Oh, well, it's the cops. Cops are never wrong. Don't question them. Don't give me that Mormon Lives Matter stuff. Okay? It's the cops are always right. Oh, no, unless the cop also wants to have sex with 15-year-old girls. And he's also part of the cult. Yes, sometimes it turns out you should question authority.
Yeah. All right, moving on to some fun stuff. A driver in Oregon recently crashed his truck, spilling 11,000 pounds, or I'm sorry, salmon, not pounds, just salmon. Let me start that again.
Okay, God bless, God bless.
No one knows what's going in my head right now. So okay.
All
right. A truck driver in Oregon crashed his truck, spilling 11,000 salmon across the highway. Now, he has a defense for his DUI. He's saying that he didn't hit the bottle hard right before getting behind the wheel. He claims that he has something known as Auto-Brewery Syndrome.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Where his body naturally produces alcohol. Okay.
I'm sure.
So look, that's his defense. I'm obviously not buying that defense, but does that condition actually exist? It does.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, this is so interesting.
I think I've got auto-weed syndrome.
Doubt it. Then you'd be sleeping all the time.
Right.
You have the opposite of that.
Well, I do eat all the time. So
true.
Maybe I do have it.
True.
So that's amazing that it has it. So
yes.
Okay, well, go ahead and explain what it is, because I'm so curious about it.
So auto-brewery syndrome is when you have an excess amount of yeast in your digestive system, okay? And what ends up happening is if you eat starchy foods, anything that's high in carbohydrates, what happens is that food then gets converted into ethanol. It gets broken down by that yeast and it turns into ethanol, which makes you drunk. So NPR had this really interesting piece on it where they were monitoring a man who claimed that he had this condition. They were watching him. His wife thought that he was a drunk behind the scenes. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I'm not drinking. I'm just naturally getting drunk. NPR monitored him. They noticed that he's not drinking anything, but his blood alcohol level would randomly spike right after he would eat carby foods. Right. I know carby's not a word. You know what I mean. They found that he had that excess yeast in his digestive system. But here's what I'm wondering. So if you take too many antibiotics, you kill the good bacteria in your stomach, right? When you do that, you tend to have issues with yeast, right? Like overgrowth of yeast. The good bacteria is what keeps that yeast in check. I'm wondering if this is a result from taking too many antibiotics. That's just my speculation, but I think this is so fascinating.
Well, it is interesting. So now, don't get me wrong, the reason we're skeptical about the salmon dude is because once you find out about this, anyone who's seen the NPR or heard the NPR piece, now you've seen this piece.
Yeah.
Every time anybody's in an accident with the Auto-Brewery Syndrome, no, that's, man, it's the yeast, dude. The yeast made me do it. I ain't got nothing to do with it. Ethanol, the whole thing. Okay, but Anna, the important question is, if that happens to you, yeah, I get it, that's super unfortunate, or maybe fortunate. You're like, oh,
no,
what can
that
I do?
sounds
I'm drunk
terrible.
all the time. Okay.
That sounds horrible.
Okay, no, I hear you. But then, do they have the symptoms of being drunk?
Yes.
Well, if they do, then he shouldn't have been driving anyway.
Yeah, so you do get intoxicated, and so if you know you have this condition, prosecutors can make the claim that you shouldn't be behind the wheel anyway, right?
I mean, this guy had a 0.29 blood alcohol level. That's over 3 times the legal limit.
Yeah.
So whether that was created by carbohydrates in his case, if he's telling the truth, or beer, it doesn't really matter that much. You still shouldn't be driving that drunk.
Right.
Then I feel bad for you that you have that condition, and your avenues for employment are going to be very limited.
Yeah.
But I can't have you driving 11,000 salmon around on a truck because you're going to create a plague where the salmon flies on people like frogs.
Oh my God, 11,000 salmon. I think that this is so interesting. The human body does amazing things. And the fact that having too much yeast in your digestive system could lead to you being drunk is amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes I do feel like I have a brewery in my stomach. Okay, so I've done your drug, man. I feel your pain. Okay.
All right. More and more people are relying on apps in order to get certain medical consultations. But what about plastic surgery? It turns out that there's a new what's wrong with me today?
Yeah, everything's going to be all right.
I know, I'm just exhausted. Sorry, guys. More and more people are turning to apps in order to get medical advice. But now apps are also giving people advice on plastic surgery. What you can do is post a picture of yourself and then change what you want changed on your body and figure out whether or not getting plastic surgery makes sense for you. Now, according to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, there was 15.6 million plastic procedures done in America in 2014 alone. Nearly 6 million of them were reconstructive procedures, with the rest either non-invasive cosmetic procedures like laser hair removal, that shouldn't really count, or invasive surgery like breast augmentation, nose reshaping, or liposuction. So the apps that I'm talking about include the Plastic Surgery Simulator app, and it's meant to help in the real surgery decision process. The person who came up with this said, "I have a good friend who performed a virtual surgery on her nose. She was stunned by the result and how better she looked. A couple of months later, she had real surgery, which was a success." So here's the question. Is it a good idea to use apps in order to get consultations about anything related to the medical industry, whether it be a medical procedure that you might really need or think you need, or if it's a cosmetic procedure?
Yeah. I'm a little torn on it because on the one hand, it's not that harmful because the app doesn't actually do the surgery.
Right.
Before you get to surgery, you have to go to a doctor, you have to consult with the doctor, so it doesn't eliminate any of those steps. The reason why I'm a little worried about it is because it's just going to encourage people. They're going to go on there, they're going to say, okay, let me try this breast size and that breast size and this breast size. And I don't mind people getting plastic surgery. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
My rule is 2 surgeries, and then you're done. Because once you get in past 2, next thing you know, you did 17. Next thing you know, you look like Catwoman. So be careful, right?
Yeah.
You just be nice and judicious with it. And if you've got an app and you're constantly changing your body parts, there's some chance you're not going to be judicious.
Yeah, look, the thing that I'm worried about is an app is not going to give you realistic expectations of what an actual surgeon's going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're toying around with an app, which, by the way, you can do the same thing with Photoshop, it's very different from what a doctor would be able to do with your body, right? Mm-hmm. So look, I remember playing around with like Photoshop or whatever to kind of see what the results would be. Mm-hmm. And the end result ended up looking nothing like you know, the Photoshop thing, or even when the surgeon, I got a nose job, everyone knows that, or
just
even
calm down.
just yeah,
10-2.
best decision of my life. But I remember when I had my consultation, the doctor does give you a before and after picture, right, just to show you what you can expect, but it's not going to look exactly like that. And even then, when the actual surgeon is giving you that after picture, it's not realistic. Like the result didn't end up looking like what the doctor said, right? Yeah. Exactly what the doctor said. It came out better, thankfully, but...
So it's not like I'm going to ban this app or anything like that. And in the end, you got to talk to the doctor. But it kind of seduces you into wanting more. So let's show them the picture that we have next. So this is one person before and after, according to that.
I mean, look here.
So first of all, I think she's beautiful on the left. And on the right, she looks preposterous. Now, I'm not saying she's not going to gather attention. She is. Yeah. Right? And even if you're going to do the surgery, for God's sake, bring it down a little bit. Literally. I mean, you're at a 10. You're going to need to be I don't know about a 2, but a 4, a 6, right?
Well, and that's the tough thing, because more important than an app that's going to give you expectations, you got to go to a surgeon who's not hungry for any client who's willing to do anything, right? You want to go to a surgeon who's going to tell you no. Yep. You know, who's going to say, no, you're going to look ridiculous if you do that. That's when you know you found a good surgeon.
I know. My surgeon screwed me. I went for liposuction surgery, and it didn't stick. No.
Actually, liposuction doesn't stick if you don't change your habits. A lot of people get lipo, and they think that's the fix-it for that problem,
That's
and then
why
you
I
gain
never
the
got
weight
lipo.
back.
I'm going to go back to the Oreo cookie French toast the next day anyway. So what difference does it make?
Yeah. So... it is what it is.
Okay, we're done with that story. We have time for Squeezy 1-1. What's wrong
That's
with
all we have.
Squeezy 1-1 in. That's what I was gonna say. That's it. We're done.
That's it. We're
That's
done.
amazing. Okay, folks. New Hampshire primary coverage coming up. What's Victor Okay, tytnetwork.com/join. Don't miss a minute of the Young Turks. Come join us. You get all the content you want anytime you want. Okay, tytnetwork.com/join. We're going to take a break here, and at 7 o'clock Eastern sharp, we're back, and the poll results start coming in. Who's going to win, Sanders or Clinton? How big is the lead going to be? Is anyone going to be able to unseat Trump? And then who's going to come in second? Kasich is surging like crazy. Rubio's losing points. Can Kasich overcome him? If Jeb Bush comes in 4th or 5th, does he leave? Does he pull a Ben Carson and go, I'm going to Florida. I got to get a change of clothes. All of that in about 15 minutes. Come right back.